Good morning. So on this Friday, we are going to talk about novel classifications and word counts. Now, if I'm working with a new camera setup, so I apologize. So we're going to talk about novel classifications and word counts, the essential guide for writers. If you're like most writers, you've thought of an idea, you have written your novel, or at least maybe the first chapter or the first draft, and if you're like me, you wrote everything before figuring out what your genre was and if your word count fit into that genre. That's a bad way to do it. Because here's what happens. You write the novel, you like it, you finish it, and you start querying agents or looking at the categories on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Kobo or wherever you're going to sell your book. And you're like, well, I thought it was fantasy, but this subplot is romance. And actually, there's some super steamy scenes in here. So maybe it's erotica. Okay, it's Syed Ben Romka. Yeah, it's Syed Ben Romka. Whoops, there's no such genre. So, what you should do, as soon as you have at least what I think is the easiest way to do things, not what you should do what you think you should do. But here's my idea to make things simple. This is what I do. When I think of an idea, I write it down. Then I look at that idea as it is, the sentence, the paragraph, the working title, whatever it is, and I decide what it's going to be. And that is the broad genre. I don't change the genre. It's the broad one. I don't change its broad category. But it may also have elements of romance. It may have some steamy, mature scenes in there. But at least I know where I'm starting. So if I'm starting with an adventure book and the characters bang every 10 pages, it's probably erotica, but it's also adventure. Now, if it's an adventure book and they bang twice, it's still adventure, especially if you're not overly descriptive. But always start off your idea. Get your idea down and then choose the genre. This way, you're not thinking about all your subplots, your subplots, your character goals, what your characters do, who your characters meet, the world that they're in. You're not thinking about all that. You're thinking, I'm going to write a story. I'm going to put these group of characters in the jungle and they're going to find a thing. That's adventure. I'm going to put these two characters in a building and we're going to talk about their relationship. That's probably a romance. So it's just easier to pick your genre at the idea stage than it is after you write the end. But anyway, I think I have rambled on enough. Let's get down to this. Novel classifications and word counts, the essential guide for writers. Let's cover it together. One of the first things that every author needs to understand after finishing their manuscript, or preferably before, like I just said, and obviously before submitting to agents, editors, or publishers, is how to classify your novel. Now, I wrote this article years ago. I mean, I would adjust this today because I think it's just easier to get your genre down at the idea stage than it is at the end stage. But at the time I wrote this, I was thinking about submitting to agents and editors and getting ready for that. And anyway, so I ended up doing it after the end. Let me tell you, in the years since I originally wrote this article, it's much easier to do the genre at the idea stage. All right, but we'll continue on because this is still relevant. This means knowing your genre and where your book fits in terms of length. Why? Because being able to clearly state what kind of book you've written can make or break your chances in the publishing world. And here's the deal, even if you're self-publishing, Amazon makes you choose your categories. I mean, they'll choose some for you. Like my vampire books, the Little Bitey series, it's in the romantasy category. I had to look that up. I didn't even know what it was. Anyway, but it is fantasy and romance, and they mashed it up, and there's where my book ended up. So sometimes your books will end up in categories like that you didn't even know existed. A lot of erotic books, a lot of mainstream erotica books end up in women's fiction. Did you know that? All right. Anyway, I don't even think that category is here. Maybe I should add it. But okay, let me stop rambling or whatever. So let's talk about this. There are countless genres and subgenres, each with their own expectations and audience. On top of that, word counts vary wildly, depending on the type of story you're telling. With this guide, we'll help you navigate the basics so that you can confidently categorize your work and set realistic goals. So what you'll find here. Novel genres, a quick overview of the most popular genres from action adventure to young adult, including a sneak peek at subgenres like, I didn't do romance, I still need to do that one. Because I was just talking about it, and paranormal. These articles like this on a website that you own, they're never finished. So word counts. Understand the standard lengths for flash fiction, short stories, novellas, novels, and epics, plus genre-specific word count guidelines. Why does it matter? How genre and word count affect your publishing options and marketing strategy. You need to know these things to know how to market your book, basically. And we'll link to in-depth guides on each genre and detailed advice on word counts. The word counts are at the end. Right at the top of this, we have a quick genre overview. If you need to know fast what it is, here it is on my page, Novel Classifications and Word Counts, stacycarroll.org. So we've got this thing that is in the way. So we've got action adventure. Fast-paced, often with danger and thrills. The typical audience is mostly adults, shifting to female leads. Word count usually ranges between 70 and 100,000 words. Children's books. Age-specific stories for kids and teens. Preschool to middle grade, they can be anywhere from 1,000 to 55,000 words, depending on the kid's age. So generally, the older the child, the longer the book. Erotica, explicit, romantic, and sexual content for adults. Can be anywhere from 50,000 to 90,000 words, and you'll find a lot in the 10 to 20,000 word range. A lot of the single book short stories. Mine actually fall into that category, somewhere between 10 and 30,000. But if you're talking about a novel, usually they're 50 to 90,000 words. Fantasy, magic, mythical creatures, and a lot of world building usually. The audience is typically teens to adults, and they can range anywhere from 100,000 words to 150,000 words. It's because of all the world building. If I did a lot of world building in my vampire book, these would easily be 100 to 150,000 words. Now I've got them down to 40, 50, sometimes 30,000 words, but it's because the world building is thin. Historical, set in or involving real historical events. Adults typically read this. The word count is typically 70 to 120,000 words. Horror, designed to scare, terrify, or unsettle readers. Typically for adults, 60 to 90,000 words. Literary. This tends to focus on style, tone, and theme. It's for adults and academics. Honestly, you could have anything from 10,000 words to takes you a year to get through it. Mystery, crime solving, puzzles, and suspense. Adults, usually 60 to 80,000 words. Paranormal, supernatural elements beyond normal science, typically for adults, 60 to 100,000 words. Romance, love stories often with happy endings. Teens to adults, usually 90 to 150,000 words. Thriller, suspense, high stakes, lots of conflict. For adults, 70 to 100,000 words. Westerns, cowboys, frontier life, and historical conflicts. Typically for adults, 70 to 100,000 words. Young adult or YA, these are coming of age stories with teen protagonists. Teens and adults typically read these. They can be any of the above genres other than erotica and explicit romance. And what they end up being is 50 to 80,000 words, and they're just written for a younger, not mature in the you know what sense, but they could be any of the above genres except explicit. Vampire is a subgenre of paranormal. These have vampires as main characters, or sometimes a vampire hunter might be the main character. Rarely a ghoul or some minion, but it could happen. Typically adults and teens, and the word count varies by the genre that it is. You could have a romance with a vampire main character. You could have adventure with a vampire main character. You could have a western with a vampire main character, but nobody's done one of those correctly. And if you know someone who has done a western with a vampire correctly, let me know. I need to do that. That's on my to-do list. Popular or mainstream. Fast-paced, plot-driven stories. For wide audiences, this is why it's called popular or mainstream. It hits about everybody. And the word count varies. Usually it's going to be above 80,000. And I will say this too. If it says varies, your target word count is probably going to be around 80,000 words. 70 to 80,000. So why do genre and word count matter? Genre helps agents, publishers, and readers know what to expect. It also guides marketing and where they stick it on the shelf if you happen to get it in a bookstore, or where they stick it on the category in the website. So let's take an in-depth look at the novel classifications. One of the first things a potential author needs to know before they submit their book, but after they finish, and honestly before you finish, is your novel classification. You have to be able to tell the agent, editor, or publisher what type of novel you've written. There are almost as many of these categories as there are writers, literally. Because you can pick a main character or a main genre, and you could have any number of subgenres. You could even have more than one subgenre. You could have, for example, you could have an action-adventure children's book featuring a vampire. You could have an erotica book that's actually an action-adventure book with fantasy elements. This is why I say pick your main genre at the idea stage. But let's take a look at these. Action-adventure. This genre has lots of fiction and adventure. Examples are Tom Clancy novels and James Bond. These would be the books in which people are in car chases or being shot at, or sometimes they're in the forest looking for artifacts and treasure. While most of this genre is geared toward male protagonists, females are starting to enter this. Children's books. This is a genre geared toward kids in preschool all the way up to 8th grade. This can be a retelling of old fables up to learning moments for a younger audience. Two of the more popular names would be Dr. Seuss or R.L. Stine, or if you happen to like the Nancy Drew series. That is kind of young adult children's right there. These are usually stories that are more fun for the audience, so they're more lighthearted. Erotica. This is a genre of, and basically in written form. Erotica would be for the people who like, not really, Most erotica writers are better than this. And similar books. These stories are extremely stimulating in a mature way and have a more interpersonal interaction of a flirtatiousness variety. It can contain fetishes and situations that the normal person would fantasize about. This is not, you can't do illegal stuff in here. If it's super taboo, it's not going to be in the erotica genre either. Fantasy. The modern form of this genre was started by J.R.R. Tolkien and can be best described as having elements found in Dungeons and Dragons. There is magic in many of these stories. Most of the time there is a lack of technology, though there are hybrids that are more modern that are like a sci-fi fantasy. That's how you get the sci-fi fantasy. You've got technical elements and the magical elements, and it's pretty cool. Anyway. Historical. This is the genre that dives into history, from books dealing with ancient Sumeria all the way up to the war in Afghanistan. This could be minor inclusions, such as what Clive Cussler includes, or in-depth stories like what's included in the book series that inspired the show Outlander. Horror. The basic premise is that someone is going to end them. Someone is going to be ended, and most likely in a horrible manner. This can include dealing with Frankenstein's monster to the evil that a truly psychotic person can do to others. Most associate this with lots of gory attacks, but many horror stories are also all about the mental anguish that the monster of the story can bring. There's also psychological horror where there's really no gore, but it's terrifying. I think The Ring falls into that. Literary. This is the genre started by Aristotle and is more of an abstract style that does not fit into other categories. In a sense, poetry is considered literary. The books in this area are more about the tone, technique, and content over bringing in magic, adventures, and things like that. So it's more, literary is more about the words and sentences used than the actual story. This is where you get those long 10-page descriptions. So yeah, if it flows like a flower garden, it's probably literary. Mystery. Anytime there is something to be solved in a story, this brings elements of this genre into it. The most recognized stories are those of Sherlock Holmes. The more modern variants are stories like Nancy Drew, books by the writer of the Da Vinci Code, or by Janet Ivanovich. There is a lot of asking who done it, and Murder, She Wrote and Agatha Christie, I think, fall into this too. Paranormal. These are stories with plot lines centered around paranormal events, which come in many forms. Most often, the result is a journey that is terrifying and mind-bending, or at the very least, thrilling and suspenseful, because of the otherworldly subject matter. Characters deal with elements that are unexplainable by modern science, such as extraterrestrials, ghosts, and superhuman abilities, like telekinesis or telepathy. Paranormal stories often involve chilling conspiracies or premises that make you question your reality, like the X-Files. And for this, we have romance is next. People wanting to read about love between two people read the romance genre. Most of these stories are male and females falling in love, but the more modern times have included LGBT stories that allow for more variations of that theme. The books may have a sex scene, but this is far from the purpose. The pursuit of love is the main push of the story. Romance books typically have happy endings. In other words, the two people that form the relationship, they live happily ever after. Science fiction. People who want to read science fiction people who want to read on what is possible if we keep improving science read these books. These could be the melding of minds and space colonization of the Annie McCaffrey Talent series, or Star Wars or Star Trek. People get to read about advanced cultures, mindsets, and technologies to get away from current problems. Thrillers. Thrillers are close to being psychological horrors, but have fewer monsters and more evil humans. They are usually intertwined with other genres, which allows for more chances to spice the story with different aspects. There are lots of suspense moments that will startle the reader, though they are not done in a jump scare manner. Thrillers tend to be action, 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 rather than action, rest, action, rest, action, rest. They really don't have any rest. Westerns. People wanting to read cowboy and Indian stories or those dealing with old cavalry conflicts. In a way, it's a subgenre of historical novels, but it's also extremely popular. And actually, it's growing back in popularity. These stories have been given modern twists, with them being mixed into science fiction. So that's that. Young adult. These are stories for teens and young adults. Think everybody up to 18, 19, 20, possibly even 21. And can include the Harry Potter series, the Divergent series, or books by Judy Blume. They are geared specifically to coming-of-age stories that can connect with their specific readers. Many of these novels have attracted older adults, but the main characters are always teens who are growing up and coming into their own. These usually attract a wide audience. They're usually less stressful to read than some adult books. And that's why older people read them. Vampire. The vampire genre encompasses everything vampire. It's technically a subgenre of paranormal, but it can also be romance, horror, and thriller, although you could certainly have a vampire western, vampire young adult, or a vampire science and fantasy book. Popular, mainstream, or commercial fiction. A genre that is made to appeal to the largest audience possible, not geared to be thematically genre specific. These stories are paced in a speedier fashion that can keep people reading. The plot is far more important than building the characters. Basic word count. Flash fiction is less than 1,000 words. Short stories usually range from 7,500 words to 12,000, or about 30 to 48 pages. Novelettes are usually between 7,500 and 20,000 words. Novellas are between 20,000 words and 40,000 words. Novels start at 40,000 words and end at 99,000 words, typically 99,9999, because the minute you get into 100,000 words, you have written an epic. And it is hard to publish these things. They are very hard to publish as a paperback because they're so long. Here, I'll go get you my one epic book. Let me go get it. All right, let me show you this thing. This thing, I forget how many words it is, but it is over 100,000 words. This is my epic coming-of-age erotica story is what this is. And it is thick. Here's the deal. I can never reformat this because it just doesn't go into this package very nicely. It is huge. I've actually, with this book, I maxed out the number of pages you can actually publish as an Amazon paperback. It is 786 words. Right there, folks. And it is not in size 12 font. I'm just saying. And I don't know what's on those pages, but a nap. These pages are a nap. So, yeah. This is an epic book. And this is how thick it is. It took me a year to write this. It took me quite a few days to get that cover together, too. But that's an epic novel. But that is a coming of age erotica book, and it has to be erotica first, coming of age second. Now, just for purpose, I'm going to tell you the character was 18 years old. All of them were, because I don't do that less than 18 years old stuff. No, no, no. So here's your advanced word counts. Middle grade students, somewhere between 20 and 55,000 words. Young adults, somewhere around 60,000 words. Adult novels. These need to have substance, so you're looking at between 70 and 90,000 words, right? Romance, usually between 70,000 and 90,000 words. Science fiction and fantasy, usually these are epics between 100,000 and 150,000 words. Mysteries tend to be on the shorter side, 60 to 80,000 words. And then under this, I've got the in-depth articles for all of this. That is a good picture. Shapeshifter fiction, identity transformation, and supernatural adventure. I'm not going to go through all of these, but if you want to go to the website and read all this stuff for yourself, you're more than free to do that. There is a link to the website in the description, stacycarroll.org. All right, folks, that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I need to do some editing on this page, actually. You know, that always happens. If you're a novelist or a writer, and I'll just cover this right now here at the end of the video. Reading your own work again after it's published, you will always find issues with it. You'll be like, oh, I could have wrote that better, or I should have deleted that, or I don't know what I was thinking here. But writing, when you're writing, it's like never done. Even if you publish it, you're like, I should have done things differently. Luckily for a web page, they're not static. You can change them. So anyway, keep that in mind, folks. There's your little tidbit for today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will talk to you later. As always, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you want to support the channel, you can now donate directly through YouTube, or the GoFundMe and Buy Me a Coffee links are still in the description. Have a wonderful day, folks.